we're still in this cardiovascular system, and we had gotten to the point where we are at the capillaries, what we also know as that business end of this system, because this is the point where everything's going to occur, where we're going to have the exchange of materials. One of the things that we have talked about several times is how we're going to have basically our tissue with those cells that are embedded into it, our capillary bed, the arterial side, venous side, and then we have mentioned that we have to have some type of control over this blood flow because we don't have enough blood in our system at one time to be able to supply every single capillary bed that we have in our bodies. So the point we left off was getting to how we're going to have some of the control that's taking place. And so when we begin to think about this control that we have, we're going to see that this blood pressure and the flow, which as you know is important within this system, and vasoreflexes, because that's what these vessels are going to do, okay? These vessels are going to have the ability to have a reflex because they have smooth muscle in their makeup. We're going to say that one type of control is local control. This means right here at this point, the local control. This is also known as the auto-regulation, controlling itself. So controlling at the point of where we find this capillary bed. Tissues are doing this. The tissues of the body are going to have the ability to affect the flow of blood to them. For example, if there are too many wastes. Now remember, every single cell that would be located in this tissue is carrying out its activities. And in doing that, the cell gives off wastes. For example, to make energy, we've got to do cellular respiration. Cellular respiration gives off the waste of CO2. If it's working on proteins, a waste from protein is nitrogen waste. All right? So out here in this extracellular fluid, something I keep talking about a lot, okay? So if this cell is putting its waste into this extracellular fluid, all of the stuff that would be coming in as a nutrient, remember how we mentioned the oxygen, the ions, all this sort of stuff, okay? And if I'm getting waste out here, and in the extracellular fluid where I've got water, all right, do you think that having these particles could affect a pressure? Yes. Okay? So that would mean I would be affecting a pressure, and if that was high for a waist, and if it was a local control, what would it demand at this level of capillary? Could I demand blood flow to come in from this capillary? Yes, I can. And then pick up the waist. So that capillary bed, these tissues are affecting what that capillary bed will do. If there's too much of the waist, it'll come in at the capillary bed. Remember those little sphincters that we pointed out? Okay? Those little sphincters will release because this is auto control. This is smooth muscle. They will dilate. Blood will get to flow in. And once it kind of washes through those tissues and cleans it up, what do you think that sphincter is going to do? It'll close, and the tissues will go back to doing their work. Does that make sense? Okay. Another thing, maybe there's trauma. Maybe we had a paper cut, and those capillary beds are cut at that point. We need to get materials there that are in the blood, such as our white blood cells and so forth. Get them there so that we can determine and help, well, maybe we can get them there so that we can help clean up the area. Maybe we're having to be active with chemicals. For example, histamine. Anybody associate that with anything? Allergies. Anybody else having a problem this time of year? Oh, yeah. Okay. Do you happen to know what's happening in these tissues, lining the sinuses, the nose, that sort of thing, parts of the respiratory system? All right. So right now, pollen is flying around. Might be some mold up in there too because we've had so much rain and that sort of thing. And, you know, as we have our sinuses, which would be an empty space, okay, a cavity, and we know that they are lined, okay, because everything is going to the exterior of the body, and pollen comes in, these little particles, okay. These little particles irritate that lining because they are foreign. This is a foreign particle trying to enter the body, and the body wants to fight it. And because we have the connection with blood vessels, okay, one of the things that will happen, blood vessels in their makeup, they can have something called mast cells, which are just right outside, like right there with the linings. And mast cells can create chemicals. We can get chemicals from the blood. And one of the things that the body does is it releases the histamine because these little pollen particles, and of course if it's having to release something, those little capillaries are leaking. And i.e., all the sneezing, all the runny eyes, the coughing, everything else, because the body's trying to expel this foreign particle out of it. And in some people, we're more sensitive to this. And therefore, we get all these fun reactions occurring. Get our Zyrtec, get our, all this sort of stuff, okay? Try to stop it, because these are called antihistamines or histamine blockers. Ever thought about that?
So where does the sneeze reflex come from? I mean, I understand the draining, like the runny eyes, runny nose, scratchy throat.
Now, the sneeze, well, because that's such a varied response that we can have, because sometimes you can sneeze just when you go from inside to outside and see and get into bright sunlight. Believe it or not, bright sunlight can cause you to sneeze. So these are reactions that are occurring based on that autonomic nervous system. And it can react to this particle that's trying to come in, trying to expel it out, okay? But there's so many things that can cause a sneeze. I don't know if they've actually ever determined.
How does someone go through majority of their life and all of a sudden then they start becoming allergic? Like, how does that work? Even if you were exposed to the same environment, nothing really changed except you for some reason.
Or the opposite.
Well, what happens is, like, are you thinking about the seasonal allergies that we're having right now, or are you thinking like an allergy to a medicine or a food?
Either one.
It's called, we build up a tolerance. And see, the body has the ability to fight off something for a certain amount of time, okay? And in some cases, that doesn't become overactive. You see, when you build up a tolerance, the system has become overactive so much that now it's like, okay, I'm done, and you don't have the tolerance. Sometimes it can be you've been exposed to it so many times, like people who might take a medication, that now when that medication's entered into the body now sees it as foreign. Rather than something to help, it sees it as something that's going to hurt. And you now have the reactions to it. And really, when it comes down to some of the things that we're like, oh, well, you know, I've never been allergic to that before, but now I'm allergic to it, the body can also build up antibodies, and they begin to actually attack the self cells. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a full-blown autoimmune, but it now says, whoa, wait a minute. This is now foreign to me. I don't know what it is, and attack it. So when we have local control, the tissues themselves are actually controlling what happens with the blood flow. We're either getting more blood flow, or it can actually stop the blood flow. Reactive hyperemia is another way that we have local control. This is the best example. When we've been out in like really cold weather and your fingers have gotten cold, maybe your nose has gotten cold, your cheeks have gotten cold, you come into where it's warm, and then all of a sudden it's like your cheeks have gotten red, your nose gets red, and it's almost like they feel hot. And that's because the blood flow had actually been taken away from those areas, meaning there was decreased blood flow to those tissues, but the cells kept working. And so now when you go back into an environment where the blood flow gets restored, the blood flow actually has to increase so that it can get all the waste out and get nutrients back to it, so it actually does a overflow to the tissues. So that's the best example for hyperactive, reactive hyperemia. Anything that would cause the tissues, the blood flow to stop, okay? When the blood flow returns, it returns in an over amount.
I want to say something about the allergy thing. I work in like a furniture store, and it's like really dusty, and I have allergies and sinuses. So like when I have to clean up, it's like my head really hurts a lot. My mom's like, you can take medicine before you go in there, but it don't work because it's really dusty in there. And I have both. I have allergies and sinuses, so all up in here.
Yeah, ever thought about just wearing the mask?
No, my mom told me to ask them, can I do that? No.
Yeah. Because really, if you think about it, you're in that type of situation, it's your body. And, you know, wearing the mask would actually help you. And then take it out. Just like people who work in nail shops, you know, you'll see them, they're wearing that mask because they're being exposed to those chemicals all day. And I don't blame them, because it's their sinuses, their respiratory system. So